Hello and welcome to the City of Peoria Planning and Zoning Commission. The Planning and Zoning Commission is composed of volunteer citizens appointed by the City Council. The Commission is the designated hearing body for a range of land use applications, including general plan amendments, rezones, conditional use permits, and amendments to the zoning code. Upon recommendation by the Commission, general plan amendments, rezones, and zoning code amendments proceed forward to the Peoria City Council for final action. For conditional use permits, the Commission will make a final decision subject to appeal. All hearings are conducted in accordance with the rules for procedure requirements to allow an impartial and efficient hearing, and all Commission meetings are open to the public under the Arizona Open Meeting Law. Each case will be called in the order in which it appears on the agenda unless otherwise announced during the meeting. Once called, City staff will give a presentation of the case, followed by a presentation from the applicant if they so desire. After the applicant's presentation, members of the public who have submitted a speaker's request form will be called to speak by the Commission Chair. The applicant may be called to provide additional information, clarification, or a rebuttal. The Commission will discuss the case, may ask additional questions, and take action. Any member of the public wishing to speak must complete a speaker's request form and hand it to the planning assistant at the end of the dais. When speaking, please limit your comments to a maximum of 3 minutes and try not to repeat statements already made by others. We welcome your comments, and as fellow citizens of Peoria, we thank you in advance for your participation.
Good evening. Welcome to the Thursday, February 1st, 2024 Planning and Zoning Commission for the City of Peoria. I'd like to start with a quick roll call of the Commission. Vice Chair Nelson.
Present.
Secretary Josephine Waitman.
Present.
Commissioner Thomas Kunkowski.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Doug Myers.
Present.
And Commissioner Leila Villasenor.
Present.
Thank you so much. I'd like to make a final request for any speaker request forms. I have several here on a couple of the agenda items. Do we have any more? Are we good to go? I think we're good to go. Okay. Next up, we'll start with the consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and have been previously reviewed by the Commission and will be enacted in one motion. No separate discussion of any of these items unless any commission members so request, in which that item will be removed and moved to the regular agenda. So, Commissioners, do I have any comments or a motion on the consent agenda?
Commissioner Raidman, I move that we accept the consent agenda as is.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Commissioners, please vote. And the consent agenda passes unanimously. First item under unfinished business. This is coming back. These next two items were continued from the prior meeting just due to limited availability of the Commission. So staff, let's revisit item 3R, 2024 Commission meeting schedule.
Thank you, Chair. Members of the Commission, Lori Deaver, I'll be presenting the next several items. Let's start with the Commission meeting schedule for 2024. So as a gentle reminder for those who are in the audience and those who may be watching online, typically the Commission has meetings the first and third Thursday of the month. Currently, the City Code allows a Board or Commission to establish the meeting schedule based on business at hand. So if there was inclination to make modifications, we could do that. So what you have in your packet before you is a draft schedule for the rest of the year. There is one instance where we know we're not going to have a meeting on July 4th because of the holiday. Typically, when we do not have business before the commission, we will also remove that meeting. So we always provide appropriate notice. In this particular year, we do have one or more major general plan amendments coming forward. And for those who have been on the commission before, this is no surprise. Those joining, just to give you a preview of things to come, you'd need 2 planning commission meetings for a major general plan amendment. One of those, the first one, is typically off-site. So what does that mean? We were not able to have that in council chambers. We have to go to another location. In that particular instance, we will start those meetings a little bit earlier to accommodate that remote location. So at some point in the future, we will be announcing those, but we do have one or more of those remote meetings coming before the commission before you this year. With that said, what staff would like to get feedback from the commission is, do we retain or make alterations to the existing schedule? And in particular, we are looking at the start time, possibly going to 6 p.m. That would be in alignment with the city council meetings as of right now. So we would like to offer that up as possible discussion and feedback from commission to see if there is any inclination in making that change. Chair?
Thank you, Lori. Commissioner Konkowski? Do you have comment? You were.
I pushed
But-
before,
Okay, all
but I'll
right,
talk.
go for it.
I do agree with the 6 o'clock meeting time. I'm confused every time I have to look at whatever schedule we're on here, so I understand it's the same time as a council meeting, and that makes it easy for me, but that's me. Thank you.
Commissioner Waitman?
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Waitman, I think I would opt to stay at 6:30, only because I think that I am the youngest member of commission, and I do work a full-time job. Coming from Phoenix, traffic can be crazy. That is a personal problem, just like yourself, fellow commissioner. But either way, I can make amendments and just leave office earlier, but I would prefer to keep the schedule as is. Thank you.
Showing off to your youth. Thank you very much for that. Gentlemen, I don't know if you have any other comments, but I'm kind of supportive of the 6 o'clock. I'm an early to bed kind of guy, so I'm supportive of it. So it's only 2 meetings. It's only 2 meetings a month. It's not like it's an everyday thing. So, that's my 2 cents. Anyone else? Do we vote on this, or is it just?
Chair, if we have consensus for the 6 o'clock, I'm seeing some yeses, some maybes, so I just want to make sure that that is okay with the commission, and then we would need to decide when we start that new time frame.
Yeah, we can make a motion. We can go ahead and move.
Commissioner Nelson, or Vice Chair, sorry.
I just want to make sure that, I think it's important that we have consensus on this. And
Yeah.
hearing Josephine's comment, or Commissioner Waitman's comments, it's a little concerning to me. So I just want to make sure it's not putting too much of a burden on you doing this at 6 o'clock. I mean, is this going to be an issue?
no,
Because
I
we
can-
value your input on this
No.
commission, and I would hate to.
No, definitely, no. I have free range to leave when I need to, so that won't be an issue. I just, I know the traffic, it can get
Yeah.
hectic. Love living
Sure
in
can.
Peoria, but sometimes I have to be remote, head to the Capitol. So I'll be there, but we can do 6 o'clock, and I'm more than willing to stand with the commissioners and just make adjustments twice a month.
Commissioner Villasenor,
Okay, thank you.
comment?
Thank you. I was just going to ask staff, is it preferable or easier with staff schedule for 6 o'clock?
Chair, Commissioner, I'm not going to lie, yes. We also would like to enjoy a little bit of the evening if possible, but more realistically, the staffing and the logistics that's involved, a 6:30 start time gets a little bit more problematic versus a 6 p.m. start time. So for selfish reasons, yes, we would prefer it.
I actually see that as the biggest gain with moving it to 6 o'clock is the relief for staff, having been a former employee of a municipality. There are many late evenings, and I'm sure, to cut it early is probably going to be appreciated by your families. So I'm in support of it.
You have anything? You're good?
Commissioner
Myers?
Waitman, I'm willing to change my vote. I mean, I definitely understand wanting to go home after long days of work. So I'm willing to change. We have some politicians here, very persuasive, and I'm willing to change that to 6 p.m.
Commissioner Myers? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm in favor of the 6 PM as well. One question for staff. The off-site meetings, will those also be at 6 PM then if we're move all of the general sessions?
Chair, Commissioner, that's a great question. Because of the logistics of that, using city facilities, often they will shut down at 8 PM. And in order to get cameras, equipment, and everything else, we have typically started at 5:30, just to make sure that we're covering all comments and all business that evening. So we want to make sure that everybody is heard and we have enough time to do that. We will give you more than advance notice in that case. We're not going to surprise you on that particular one. In fact, if it's okay, we would start this probably in the March timeframe or April, depending on when you want to do this. We don't have anything currently scheduled for the February 15th, but we'll give you adequate notice for the change. Would the first March meeting be acceptable for a 6 PM?
We're good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Villaseñor?
I'm sorry, so do we not have a February 15th meeting? Is that what you just said?
Commissioner, no, we do not. I'm giving you preview of things to come. There is no
Okay.
February 15th. Happy Valentine's Day early.
Got it. All right, let's go to the next item. Item 4R, election of officers, discussion and possible action to elect officers for the Planning and Zoning Commission for the calendar year 2024. This is another agenda item that was continued from the last meeting due to attendance. So, Ms. Deaver, do you want to talk about eligibility for?
Yes, indeed. Thank you, sir. So a little bit of background. We always do this on an annual basis, usually the first meeting that commission has. In this particular instance, as just a reminder, you are eligible to serve in a position for 2 years. We do ask that you act on each position separately. Right now, all members are eligible to continue to serve, or if they wish to move to a different position, anyone would be eligible to serve in each position. So I would ask if there's nominations, and so if you would like to nominate yourself, or you would like to phone a friend and tap them in, I would ask for each position independently. Please identify whether you're willing to accept the nomination, and then a vote, please. So let's start with chair. Is there any nominations for chair?
Commissioner Konkowski?
I nominate Commissioner Fighter, the current chair, to be future chair.
I do not need a second. Chair, would you wish to continue?
I would wish to continue. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so
Are there any other nominations?
much.
I have to ask, for a chair, any other nominations for
Is there a
chair?
coup? Is there a coup?
Seeing there are no others, can we have a vote, please?
And the motion passes unanimously. Thank you all for your continued confidence. What's that? That would have been great.
Next up is vice chair.
I'd like to make a motion for Commissioner Waitman for vice chair.
Commissioner, would you accept?
I heard him make a motion. Definitely, I'm very appreciative. As I said, I won't brag on the youth again, but I've been enjoying the upward trajectory, learning with my fellow commissioners. So I appreciate your confidence, and I'm looking forward to what's to come. Thank you.
Any others and hat in the ring on this one? Seeing none, may I have a vote, please?
And that passes unanimously as well.
Last but not
Next
least,
up
we
for
have
secretary.
secretary.
Commissioner Konkowski?
I'd like to nominate current Vice Chair Nelson to be feature treasurer for 2024.
For secretary? Okay,
Thank you for the nomination. I would accept.
thank you. Anybody else? Seeing no other hats in the ring, please vote.
And that passes unanimously as well. Thank you so much. Next, we'll go to new business. These next two items on the agenda are study sessions. No action will be taken. So let's start up with item number 5, study session as it relates to accessory building regulations. Again.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this particular code amendment, we were looking to provide balance to the regulations while addressing the impacts and concerns from adjacent properties, and we were also looking to possibly streamline the existing regulations. So what are we talking about? Two particular provisions within the city code related to accessory buildings. Tonight's feedback is focused on a summary of what we heard at the last commission meeting and seeking final guidance on commission on whether to pursue this amendment. Just by way of example, these are the type of structures that we are talking about. Could be RV, the ramadas, garages, secondary structures, et cetera. In terms of things that we were looking for, the existing code focuses on 3 areas: location, maximum building height, and setback criteria for these particular buildings. We had not proposed a change on the location, so there is a prohibition on the front yard, and that would have continued. We were looking to unify the building height across all zoning districts to go from 20, in some instances, to 25 feet. At last commission, we presented 4 options, and I won't belabor these in detail. But the first one was the existing tiered system with a couple of refinements. The next one was a simplified tier system. A graduated step back, which was that 1-to-1 or 2-to-1, so as the building would get back, as the building would get taller, the step back would increase. And then the hybrid, which was having a setback immediately and then the graduated step back as it continued to get grow in height. So summary of what we heard. Commission identified that any code changes and the code itself should be as simple as possible. We heard some concern expressed allowing some buildings at the property line and a desire for a setback to be in place, regardless of the height. There was a general preference from the graduated and the hybrid step back. However, we did not receive clear consensus between the two of them. Out of those 2 options, that hybrid step back, which required a minimum right off the bat, and then that graduated height increase, that was slightly preferred, but again, no consensus. Out of options 2 through 4, those would have rendered existing buildings as non-conforming in several cases. And if you were to select that hybrid or that graduated step back option, the number of non-conforming cases would significantly increase at that point in time. So options 2 through 4 would have increased staff time to investigate complaints if we were to receive them. So it would have spent more time investigating whether they were existing before the code change, after the code change, et cetera. Hearing no consensus, current staff recommendation before commission is to withdraw the text amendment case and potentially incorporate changes at a later time. The 2 changes that we would consider only would be that unified building height across all zoning districts, so unifying at 25 feet, and clarifying what we do currently in practice, so the code, and you will see that in the graphic on the right. It is to change and add the word and / in front of or, and that would align with what we do for existing practice today. There would be no change to the setbacks. That would be only a clarification purpose for regulation and clarity and enforcement. So I can take questions, I can go back through any changes if you wish. However, we're looking for commission for options and staff direction. The 3 before you would be do not proceed with the code revisions whatsoever. Possibly pursue the two options at a later date, the ones that are on the screen with the height and the setback. Or the third one, which is proceed with a specific option out of what we've talked about, and we will need clear direction which option that would be. So Chair, I would defer to the commission as to what preference would be.
Do any commissioners, we do have a speaker request form on this item. Do any commissioners have questions for staff? Okay. Commissioner, Vice Chair Waitman.
Oh, wow, well, thank you. Thank you, Chair. I do have a question. This is a clarifying question, mainly possibly because I wasn't here for our last meeting. The building setback, I'm trying to understand if there's going to be a tier. So we're saying that as the higher or the height, depending on the height, we will have the setback. And then there's also an option 3, which is the graduated step back, right? So my question is this: if we, I see A, which is unifying everything, right? It's fair and it's easy, right? But then what happens to, some of those structures that are already grandfathered in? There are larger ones, right? Now, my neighbor has a very nice one, and now I want one, but I can't do that because of, this changed. So if you could just explain and maybe clarify to me how that would work, option B, just for clarification.
So Chair, Commissioner, thank you for the question. So in this particular instance, what you see on the screen to the right are the existing setback conditions as they are today.
Okay.
So we have a 3-tier system. The first one is if you're under 8 feet in height and under 200 square feet in area, no setback is required on the side or rear yard. You go into what we call a tier 2 if you're between 8 and 9 feet or you're in the 200 to 300 square foot range. At that point, there's a minimum 3 feet for side and rear. Once you exceed the 9 feet or you exceeding the 300 feet, now you're needing to meet principal building setbacks. So what does that mean? Typically on a side yard setback, that would be up to 5 feet on majority. And then your rear yard would be 15 feet. I'm making sure. I'm going to phone a friend. Is it 20? Sorry, it's a long day.
Yes, and just to add a little clarification too, so what we're seeing on the screen is actually the existing code. So if the option tonight is to not pursue the amendment and retain the existing code, we're just suggesting as a staff, there are a couple of refinements we really would like to make. One of them is with the building height, unified the building height of being 25 feet for accessory buildings. We have some zoning districts that call out 25, some that say 20. Why not unify it? That'd be one refinement we'd want to make. The second one would be adding that and slash, because right now it's really confusing with just the or statement. It really should be an and or statement. And that would be consistent with our current practice. So if we keep the current code in place, we would just ask that we pursue these two refinements as part of a future effort.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So it is just verbiage. I think I misunderstood because I wasn't here. Thank you.
I'll open it up to public comment. Mr. Went, welcome back. If you can state your name and address for the record again.
Thank you for your time again. My name is Shane Went, 10552 West Jesse Lane, Willow District. And I'm here once again to say, hey, if we can raise it to 9 feet and less than 200 square foot would be ideal, I think. I've presented facts before. If you build an 8-foot wall, it's not 8 foot. It's a little bit over 8 foot. If you go to big box stores such as Sam's Club, Costco, pergolas, gazebos, those are all over 8 foot. These structures are all through the neighborhoods, and they are on really next to the property line. I think your concerns about having them right on the property line is kind of set in there with that drainage. So if you have something that has a wall, you're going to have a roof, correct? So on that roof, it's going to be angled down. You're going to have some sort of pitch to it. So the maximum height is not going to be along the edge of the property line. It's going to be at that pitch. So the highest point will not be next to the property line. And you also have that drainage, which says, hey, you can't drain over into the other property. So that allows for anything that has a wall, which is automatically going to have a roof, That means you gotta be a couple inches off that property line so you don't drain over into the property. So that's kind of what you're concerned about, having a huge wall right next to you. You can't have it because, one, the pitch is gonna be at the roof is gonna be 9 foot, but the angle down will not be 9 foot over there. Also, that would simplify all of this. I don't think the 8 foot, 9 foot, and these tiers are different because you also have 300 square foot in there. Maricopa County has a 200 square foot guideline for non-permits. So that's why I'm trying to take away the 300 square foot, get rid of that, because that's outside of county code. County code is at 200 square foot. So keep that at 200 square foot, which is kind of restricting. Don't build something huge. Bring it back in the Maricopa County guidelines of 200 square foot, but definitely change that height over that 8 foot, because everything you look at is over 8 foot. When you build it, it's going to be a little bit over 8 foot, and when you go to purchase it, it's going to be a little bit over 8 foot. Another example is the Tough Sheds at Home Depot. The most popular things, those are all over 8 feet. These are all through the backyards right now. So even if you had to go home and said, hey, I bought mine from Costco or Sam's Club, I don't know if it's 3 foot away from the side, you probably have your answer right there. We should be able to move those pergolas, should be right next to the property line since they don't have a wall and they don't have to worry about the water. But the things that do have roofs are gonna have walls, and that's where you're gonna have that water thing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Wendt. I'd just like to say I appreciate your passion on this case. I think this is your third or fourth time being here, so we're appreciative of your input.
you.
We may not agree with it, but we appreciate your.
Two important things in Arizona, water and shade.
And
So regulating shade is very important
And
to me.
setbacks. And setbacks. So
Regulating shade is.
Thank you so much. So I'll close the public comment. I kind of feel like we've beat this issue into the ground long enough. Ms. Deaver, the amount of time that you've spent on this is appreciated. I just don't see there as much of an appetite for any changes to this existing code. My thought is, you know, if you need to come back with an amendment that changes or to and/or, I don't think anybody would have any issue with that. But, you know, making changes to setbacks, I just don't feel that there's much of an appetite for that. You know, I know sheds are 8 feet. Move them away from the wall. So I think that's kind of the gist of it. That's my
Made a
opinion.
request to speak.
Secretary Nelson?
Is it not working?
Yeah, it's working.
Oh,
You're just
ignoring it.
okay. Commissioner Villasenor.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's see, can you hear me? Great. I definitely respect your comments, and I understand there's not much of an appetite, but personally, I do think that it's can be cleaned up. I would like staff to pursue some cleanups. I think that the gentleman's points regarding pergolas and gazebos, you know, we had a very robust discussion regarding the difference of open air structure versus four-walled structures. Open air structures are oftentimes aesthetically pleasing if you can see it from yard to yard, and to the gentleman's point, are typically 9 feet by regulation. So I feel that there should be something, if you're going to clean it up, and I'm okay with minor amendments, my two things are to differentiate between those. Now, a tough shed, like to your point, Tony, just move it away from the wall. But the other thing that I also do think is important is there should always be some type of a setback. If it is taller than the fence of your neighbor's yard, it should be pulled back, period. It seems common or common sense, again, because of maybe the water runoff and things like that, but it's not. People do lack common sense, so having that in there is fine. Now, as far as, you know, putting on a bunch of more work for staff to have to investigate complaints, I'm absolutely sympathetic to that. I think we're just gonna have a lot of non-conforming uses, and with today's technology, we can easily show that it's been grandfathered in, that it was there prior to, or whatever the case may be. But anyways, that's how I feel. If the rest of the commission does not have an appetite, that's fine. But I do, those three things are important, I think, to clean up if you are going to work on cleaning it up.
Secretary Nelson?
Yeah, I'll just kind of piggyback on that. I think there's more consensus here maybe than staff recognizes, particularly around the setbacks. I hope that we won't kick this can down the road too far. I hope we can revisit this maybe by year end. You know, let's put a date on it, and I think we've had some good feedback. I mean, I went ahead and drafted an option 5, I think would work. That includes 1-foot setbacks and kind of a graduated approach that I'm willing to share with you if you want to take a look at it, but I think it's doable. I don't think this is insurmountable. I totally agree with the comments regarding setbacks. I just think that's important. I think we need to look at that. Again, but I certainly respect your recommendation tonight, and I understand the consistency you want with building heights. That makes total sense to me. We can certainly leave this as it is now, but if I would just ask if we can bring it back by the end of the year, that would be terrific. That would be my only suggestion. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Konkowski?
Yeah, I know we had that discussion last time about the pergolas and stuff like that, and that's, I did look at mine. Mine's fairly close to the fence, and it is at 9 feet. I would not fall into this, I would not be within code. I'm within my HOA though still, but not within the code. So I think we do need to separate those out somehow, this open air thing. To Mr. Wentz's point too, I mean, when I looked at these, and I tried to study these fairly detailed somewhat, I like the word simplified. So number 2, it said simplified, which to me, if it was 7 feet high, there was 0 setback, right? On front and rear, if it's 7 feet, and then tier 2 would be 7 to 9 feet, 3 feet back, and then boom, and then we're back to 5 feet. What I would say with that, like to Mr. Wentz's point, is the roof lines are usually angled. So at the fence line, if you put it in that direction to the fence with the roof line aligned with the fence, that would be maybe 6 feet, 7 feet, whatever. But then it backs away from the fence line. So are we taking, I know last time we talked about taking that peak being the 9 feet, 8 feet, and applying it to the setback. But that 9 feet or 8 feet could be the setback already if it was whatever the angle of the roof line was. Does that make sense? I mean, if I have a shed and I'm putting it long ways next to my fence, as long as I'm not up to my side yard setback, I would still be away from that setback where the peak of the building is.
Chair, Commissioner Konkowski, what I'm hearing is you would like us to do 2 things. Number 1, again, separate out the code for clarity between ramadas, pergolas, et cetera, versus something with a walled-in application. The other one is to consider where we're measuring the height of the building in terms of the setback. We can do that. In terms of, for consideration by commission, yes, you will need a slope in order to have runoff in a certain direction. Some applications, though, such as an RV garage, you will not have a sloped roof. And so in particular, we need to be cognizant of the roof types and the structures that we would be talking about. But that is something that we can consider and revisit. So we are open for feedback, and I'm understanding that there is a preference to revisit towards the end of the year.
Thank you. And one further comment on that, I had this issue last time, is that option 1 has the square footage to it and the other ones don't. Correct? We didn't address any square footage, so those other buildings could be.
So Chair and Commissioner Konkowski, so I do, like I said, I did have the options available in case we did have discussion. So option 1 is the existing criteria as we have it today. So that focuses on both height and size of the building. To simplify the code, option 2 would remove the size requirement and only look at it from a height perspective. In the conversation with commission, there was some reluctance to remove the height requirement out of the tier condition. So that would be something that we would want to do a quick check with commission on, if that was still the prevalence across with consensus.
Okay. Commissioner
thank you.
Wait, or Vice Chair Waitman?
Thank you, Chair. Just back to Commissioner Nelson's point, I was kind of intrigued that he talked about an option 5 because I'm happy we had this public comment because, yes, the gentleman really just made me think about my shed and the one that we bought. And I have to take a look at, see how far we are. But I would love to see if we could not only have a differentiation of pergolas, accessory buildings, but then also possibly even explore some more options as an option 5 might be a possibility, but I just want to hear that. So if we can really put a date on it so we can close this discussion, is that a possibility so that we can do our research, know what we have, and explore maybe some options that may be suggestions from commissioners and do some research?
Okay.
Thank you, sorry.
Anything else? Commissioner Villaseñor? Please.
And one last thing I do remember in the presentation that really stuck with me is part of the goal or the priorities was to simplify the process or make it easier for our inspectors that are out in the field. I'd like to keep that in mind. I mean, I know we all are in agreement with keeping it simple, but absolutely make it as easy as we can for our field staff.
Okay. Anything else from staff? Not, we'll
Chair, I would have one last commission. I'm guessing at the end of the year, we would like another study session for dialogue rather than moving forward with an actual action. We will come back to you with a date if everybody is in agreement with that.
fine. Okay.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, 6R, study session, self-storage code amendment. This is for discussion item only, and no action will be taken this evening. So, staff, if you'd like to present.
Yep, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I'll go ahead and offer some opening remarks, and then I'll ask our Deputy Director, Lori Deaver, to lead a discussion on this amendment. So this is a city-initiated code amendment. This was at the behest of our leadership team. The planning department, we were directed to initiate a code amendment that, although this amendment is specific to one land use type, that being self-storage facilities, it is in furtherance of a larger economic development objective. So as you may know, the City Council, they've identified 4 primary focus areas, and that includes water security, public safety, innovative government, and of course, economic development. This amendment is intended to support the larger economic development interests. And so what do I mean by that? There we go. To that point, the city is aggressively creating the conditions and expanding the opportunity to bring in base industries and revenue-generating opportunities. We are still largely a bedroom community. I think we all see that. Most of our workforce, currently, they outcommute to other job centers outside of the city. So the city is really aggressively trying to change that balance. Additionally, with a limited commercial base, sales tax dollars are often captured in other surrounding communities. And in fact, I was at the December council meeting. There was a presentation made on the Trailhead infrastructure reimbursement case, and there was a slide that was shown. And as you look at Peoria relative to our peer communities, we had the lowest sales tax per capita capture rate. And so that was first time I had seen a graphic like that, and it was pretty telling, and certainly added fuel to some of our efforts that we're trying to look at in terms of economic development. So as we look at future opportunities, we want to make sure that our remaining vacant or unutilized land is best positioned for these economic development opportunities. So tonight, we're talking about a code amendment that addresses one land use type, self-storage facilities. Why this one? Well, we have received an inordinate number of applications over the last several years. Lori will touch on that. And to be clear, this amendment is in no way intended to prohibit or structure, it's not intended to prohibit self-storage facilities. In fact, they absolutely have a role in our community. They have a place. In fact, they're often very good transitional land uses. So that's not the point of this exercise. What we are intended to do is rather protect our best positioned sites within the city for higher order commercial or job generating activities. So with that, I'm going to ask Lori to lead the presentation.
Thank you, Chris. So in particular, we're looking at that last bullet point as Chris mentioned. In terms of the code amendment itself, I'm going to do a couple of different things. I'm going to walk through kind of some brief background and then get into the code amendment language. being proposed. So in terms of personal storage facility types, there are two. Self-storage, also known as mini-storage. So do forgive me if I mix my terms, but it's one and the same, self-storage, mini-storage. I'm sure the industry leaders behind me will correct me on that particular one, but I'm using the layman's terms on that. We also have, as the second, is boat and RV storage, so those two types. In terms of economic considerations, as Chris mentioned, this is not in alignment with the city's targeted industries. In particular, the industry as itself is a low sales tax or an employment generator. There is a tendency to consume prime commercial and industrial sites along economic corridors if left unchecked. In terms of statistics and analysis within the city itself, this is within city limits, there are currently 32 existing facilities that we are aware of. If you were to draw a 1-mile buffer around the city limits, there are an additional 12, and that's within the county and other jurisdictions. We also have a couple of cases in before, so all said and done, with those additional 3, there would be 47 facilities either within or around the city. In terms of development inquiries, we took a look. In addition to the cases coming before commission and council, we will typically have anywhere from 5 to 8 formal inquiries on a pre-app basis. That doesn't include informal requests with those trying to do a quick check, if you will. So the number of inquiries is consistently high in that regard. So there's a level of interest for these type of facilities. Kind of just doing a quick state comparison and some of the information that we do have available right now. I have seen approximately 918 facilities and counting within the state. We are a growth area in the demographics, and so those numbers continue. In terms of square feet per person, I've seen approximately 6.22 square feet per person. We are slightly running above the average in some regards. That's looking at it from a state perspective, not a Peoria perspective. In terms of vacancy, I have seen in the 2022 timeframe a 4.6% rate, and that was due to increase due to economics within the 23 and 24 category. Nationally, I've seen anywhere from 8 to 10%. So statistics aside, one of the things to consider is the demand for storage is a seasonal item. So occupancy declines second half of the year. Think when people are moving, coming, going, et cetera, what those times of the year would be. And it's not just that in particular. So if you're downsizing, you're moving to a different state, if you're needing of inventory, temporary storage, so things of that. Factors including within the vacancy rate and when they're selecting certain sites. It's the class of the facility, the type of the facility, and the level of amenities. So we've had a number of existing sites within Peoria for quite a while. In terms of starting to get into the proposal, we have 4 methodologies or 4 areas that we're looking at. First one is to update the zoning districts that permit the facilities, and as the 4 that you see on the screen. I'm going to touch on those in the next following slides. So the first one, what do we mean, update those zoning districts? Those are what permits or allow those facilities to occur. We wanted to make sure that to recognize the operational differences between indoor and outdoor storage facilities. What do I mean by that? Indoor facilities would be like on the top of the slide where it would be a vertical application. So all of the units are internal to the site. You may have loading internal, the bays inside. From a boat and RV or outdoor storage facility, these can be both carports, garages. Sometimes you will have an outdoor facility, which is much more of a horizontal application. They will sometimes also offer boat and RV within it. So boat and RV can be both standalone or it can be included within an outdoor storage facility. And in particular, given those dynamics, we wanted to make sure to either remove or modify certain districts based on what we were trying to achieve from an economic standpoint. These are some examples of what I'm referring to. So getting into the districts in particular, and I know you guys are all planners at heart, but I'll walk you through what the letters on the table mean real fast. From a commercial district perspective, our PC districts, in particular PC2 is in the Fletcher Heights area. That has some automobile type uses, but it's not intensive automobile type uses. It's more of a neighborhood character. So you would find that more in kind of the Fletcher Heights area. Our C2 category is our tried and true intermediate commercial, and that's on an arterial intersection. Arterials would be your Bell Road, Thunderbird, et cetera, as you go forward. Our C3 area, that is within Grand Avenue corridor in particular, and the Old Town area. The C4 district is both on Bell Road and Grand Avenue. It's, excuse me, it's more of a regional basis, but not necessarily intended for full, heavy retail that you might be thinking of, because Grand Avenue, it was a little bit smaller in scale in that perspective. But it also can be within our automotive area, tucked around and serving it. So the C5 is along Bell Road, and that's our auto district area in particular. Our employment categories go from our business headquarters, kind of business park application, into our typical I-1, which would be the manufacturing, tried and true business, industrial employment categories. Our I-2 is the heaviest of the heavies on the manufacturing side of things. So in this particular slide, we are separating out the boat and RV storage. As you can see, the indoor self-storage, that would be that vertical application, versus the outdoor storage, which would be the horizontal application. And in particular, we have found the most successful indoor applications would be in the C2. So we would be recommending to remove the other two items from the C2 area. We are also recommending, because we're adding conditions or operational restrictions within the proposed code, that instead of the conditional use permit requirement in the C5, that it would be permitted if it meets all of those operational restrictions. Going on to number 2, modifying the basically locational requirements along roadway corridors. So we are recommending to limit access to an arterial or collector roadway. The arterial is the 1 mile roadways, again, the Bell Road, the Thunderbird. The collectors would be kind of your half-street conditions. Think of like Sweetwater and things of that nature. So it's the kind of the secondary transmission before you get into the full neighborhood area. So we're asking to restrict access onto the arterial collector. Conversely, we would be looking to prohibit access to local streets, so directing this type of traffic into local neighborhoods, and removing access to limited access parkways like Lake Pleasant Avenue and Grand Avenue in particular. The third component methodology that we would recommend is a separation between the facilities. And we are suggesting a 1 mile separation between them measured from the site property line. In looking at the existing facilities, for the vast majority would actually meet this requirement. There would be some instances where they've been within the 1 mile radius, but that would be our recommendation. Fourth proposal is the final one, which would be requiring a minimum setback from an arterial or arterial intersection. So I just picked an intersection because it's fairly close by, 75th Avenue and Cactus. So think of those. So a 1/4 mile out from that intersection, you would not be able to locate within that radius in there. With that said, we very specifically went arterial to arterial intersection, the main corridors. We did not say arterial to collector intersection. And in particular, we had a boat and RV case before commission near 111th Avenue and Rose Garden Lane. That was an arterial to a collector roadway, and so it would meet the criteria. And given the dynamics of that site up against the Ventana Lakes area, we thought it was a good location, and so that's why we were in agreement with that location. So we were very specific. It is an arterial to an arterial intersection, which is our prime corners for retail commercial. So existing and proposed facilities, what is the impact of this code? There is no impact on existing facilities continuing to operate. Currently, we have two facilities that are going through the development process. As a reminder to Commission, we had one before you at the January 18th meeting going to City Council. The other one we anticipate moving forward to hearing probably second quarter or if not third quarter of this year. So they are moving forward in the process. We would not impact those applications, so this would be going forward sans those two applications in the process. In terms of public outreach, we initiated that January 11th. Outreach methods are, as you see, with the website, stakeholder email, and I have a couple on the slide in terms of up and coming. I'm going to touch on each of those areas here briefly. So as a reminder, we've talked about it before, but any text amendment that we move forward in the process, we're providing that information on the city's website. It provides an overview of what a code amendment is and what it does and who has authority for that. It also provides a description and a draft code for anybody to look at and view. Staff contact if you wish to contact us, and the next steps. When we are making changes through the process, we try to be as up-to-date as possible, and so I do have the website on there. We've tried to make it real easy, peoriaaz.gov/code amendments. Also wanted to remind folks, and we've actually do have this in the packet before you this evening, there is a public comment button on there, so a form that you can fill out, and it's open to all. Regardless of the case, regardless of the project, we take feedback for anything moving forward. We did do a targeted stakeholder email for applicants within the last 2 years. We did receive 2 letters in opposition. That was included in your packet. We did ask our ED departments, economic development, and I do want to send out a kudos and a thank you to them. They sent out a very specific, specialized email newsletter out to those that have signed up. It reached over 3,000 contacts, and those that did not open or, open it up and click on it, they resent it as an opportunity. The initial rate was over half of folks that looked at that email. The final was almost 55%. That was one of the highest ones that we've had opened up and viewed, so we know we had eyes on this particular amendment. Across all industries, because this goes across multiple industries for contacts, it was about a 37% roughly across industries. So if you weren't a stakeholder in particular, but you had a friend or phoned a friend, you could forward it to them and send it. Excuse me. So we had an open house January 25th. We had 4 attendees, and they were industry stakeholders, as you see on the screen. I wanted to mention within your packet, a slide deck was provided outlining the benefits of the mini storage. Key points that were brought up. So it creates available inventory space for startups and seasonal businesses. The mini storage or self-storage, industry empowers small businesses to operate more efficiently and better manage cost. They indicated 1 in 5 people today use self-storage facilities. They did have concern with the land use restrictions, basically constricting the competition and raising the prices because those that were already in existence versus those that could be moving forward with a facility. So one of the things they also wanted to mention was our growth, and especially with smaller lots and multifamily residential, the downsizing, the moving, et cetera, all of that, along with the HOA restrictions. When there is limited option for storage, personal storage on site, that's where the demand and the growth for the industry occurs. And so they wanted to put that into perspective. I have paraphrased. I know that the folks behind me wish to speak and elaborate much further, so I would defer to them to expand on those points. In total, there were 2 letters of opposition which were included in the packet, and on the dais this evening, there were 5 additional letters of support that we did receive from that public comment form. In addition to the study session this evening, We are taking comments throughout this entire process, and so there's still opportunity to provide comments, thoughts, and feedback. As we move forward to the public hearing process, there is a legal ad. It recognizes the commission and council dates. Anybody can come and speak, provide comments, et cetera. So we still have opportunity for feedback on this text amendment. With that said, our next steps, looking forward, we are anticipating a March 7th time frame for going in front of commission for consideration, and possibly an April 2nd date for council consideration. With that, Chair, I will open it up for any questions.
Thank you, Lori. Do any commissioners have any questions, concerns, ideas? Commissioner Villaseñor.
Thank you. Great job, great presentation. Just a couple questions. Specifically, you had pointed out in the very beginning that this industry is a low employment producer or doesn't produce a lot of jobs. But I noticed on the revised graph, you still would like to allow them in our employment corridors. Can you go back to that one slide? And I don't know that I disagree or agree. I just would like to know maybe the thinking behind that.
Yeah, and before Lori starts in, I can
Right there.
reassert an earlier
The
point.
employment districts.
Yes, and so we're certainly not, again, not looking to prohibit it. We know we're going to have additional storage facilities. We're trying to be more intentional about where they can locate. We're trying to protect those major corners with the high visibility where we'll have other types of commercial opportunities. We're trying to protect our major corridors. And so that's kind of the thinking behind it. So as we go through this exercise and we entertain questions, we would certainly like to hear from the commission and others about, are there any pain points in terms of the types of methods that we're suggesting, relegating it to, mile separation, not being within a quarter mile of a major intersection, not being along Grand or Bell Road, or I'm sorry, Grand or Lake Pleasant Parkway, and some of those aspects. So we'd like to hear from that as you go along. And Lori?
Thank you. Chair, Commissioner, to kind of add on to that particular one, from a C2 perspective, in a vertical application, you have less footprint in order to be able, that you would need. As you get larger, the amount of land that you would need for a horizontal application, you're going to want a sizable facility that offers a certain number of units and certain number of either boat or RV spaces in this particular way. The C5 and the employment districts are better suited for the acreage requirements associated with them. So it's not necessarily employment in and of itself, it's the acreage and what would be needed for the successful execution of those facilities. And so we often find it would be easier within those particular areas.
Okay, no, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just going to add another point, too. From a character standpoint, too, I think we're making a distinction between outdoor facilities that are more expansive, have a different character than some of the indoor ones. And so if you think about our C2 districts, which are most of our commercial districts around town in those high volume areas, a lot of those are restaurants and offices. And so, it seems like the outdoor facilities have less of a activation experience. And just a different character. That's part of it.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. Again, I wanted to get some background on your thinking there. Do any other cities in Arizona or the Southwest have the separation requirement?
Chair, Commissioner, the answer is no. We would be leading the way in this particular endeavor, especially with the items that we are proposing in concert, working with one another. So there are other municipalities outside of Arizona that have one or two of these together, not for this industry within the city, within the state. However, these are not new methods being used. As you can, if you will recall, we have certain other uses that have separation requirements that we've used that provision before. There are instances where we've gone back and refined the location of the districts because we've talked through the evolution of the businesses warrant pulling them away from certain districts and favor other districts. So in their totality, there is no other community that is proposing this. Separately, there are bits and pieces, and so it's not an uncommon practice.
Thank you.
thank you.
Vice Chair Waitman?
Thank you, and I think that Ms. Deaver already gave clarification. I just want to comment that I am very much so in support of some type of mileage or separation, just because of the oversaturation. For my 2 terms sitting on commission, the amount of time that self-storage comes before the commission, that's usually a regular thing. So I do understand that right now, I believe that we're looking more at, like, we don't want this prime commercial and industrial land to all be dedicated to self-storage, because possibly it would not generate the amount of revenue, or it would not generate the amount of employment that we could have if we diversify businesses. Is that what I'm understanding?
Chair, Commissioner Waitman, that is the impetus behind the code amendment in and of itself. And again, to Chris's earlier point, this is not a prohibition by any means, because the industry does play a very keen part in providing community. So we do want to make sure that we're very clear, this is not a prohibition, this is a refinement of the locations in which they could go.
Okay. Just to finish my comment, I thank you for that clarification. I really want to thank the Arizona Self-Storage Association, because it kind of helped me put things in perspective and made me think. I do agree that we need to have land that we can dedicate to maybe some businesses that generate more revenue, but we also have to think about these self-starters, these entrepreneurs that need storages. We need to think about college students that may leave, but they can't, leave home, but they want to be here. My younger brother, just an example, professional football player, plays in the NFL. The only way that he was able to, in his first year of his career, where he had no place to call home a team, was to have a self-storage, so he could continue to have his stuff somewhere and, pretty much be homeless and be on the road, to tryouts to teams. And just an example, but usually, these are, residents that really need that storage. And I also know that, huge things happen. We see a cool advertisement here about a amazing business started in a 30-foot storage by our Mayor Beck, but things like that do happen, and I do want to kind of give that some deference too, because we do need these. But do I understand the oversaturation? I do understand that. So not cutting it all the way out, but maybe a mileage separation so that we can dedicate some of that more attractive land to some diverse businesses. That is something that I am all in for. But closing out like an entire community, business owners, college students, residents that need it, we have to think about that too. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, I'll open it to public comment. I have several, 1, 2, 3, 4 speaker request forms. We'll start out, John Hartman. If you would like to come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and just request that you keep your comments to 3 minutes.
I'll keep it to 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Chairman, Commissioners, I'm John Hartman, address 19120 East Canary Way in Queen Creek. This is important to me. I made the drive all the way from Queen Creek to be here tonight. I'm a self-storage developer, and some of the things that are being proposed have me extremely concerned. I understand self-storage isn't a sexy use by any means for most people. My wife doesn't think it's sexy. She doesn't get as excited as I do every time I drive by a self-storage facility. So I understand that. However, it does serve a need in our community. It provides for an economic development. We've talked about that. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it, but it does serve as an incubator for small business. It also serves the residents of your community. It provides them an opportunity or location to store excess goods, RVs, those things that that the HOAs won't allow in their communities. They need that to be in close proximity to their homes. Self-storage only functions if it's close to the homes. It needs to be an extension of a resident's home. They need to look at it that way. It needs to be where they travel. It needs to be where they transact retail business and commercial business. It needs to be close by to that, so that it's convenient for them all of the time. Now, The part of the proposal tonight that's most concerning to me is the distance requirement, or that you're trying to propose between self-storage facilities. We don't do that with any other types of businesses. We have gas stations on multiple corners. We have grocery stores across the street from each other. They're competing properties. Self-storage, why wouldn't we allow competing properties to operate in the same general vicinity, same general area? If there's demand for self-storage, we'll build it. If there's not demand for self-storage, we have no desire to build it. We don't want to lose money on it. So I would propose that we let the market dictate where it's appropriate to build. Secondly, you did touch on it tonight, that it is a great transition use. I just opened a facility in a neighboring municipality. It's on a major arterial. Now, we're not right on the corner. We're set back off the corner. There's retail developing on the corner, and then we are adjacent to the retail, but we buffer the community, we buffer the neighbors, so that the neighbors aren't having to listen to some of the less desirable things that come with commercial and retail development. You know, the joke is, in our industry, we're the quietest neighbor other than a cemetery. People love to back up to us. We're quiet. We don't generate a lot of traffic. We don't generate any noise. I think it's important to recognize that. Requiring us to be 1,320 feet off of an arterial intersection seems a little bit arbitrary, especially when there are regularly pieces of property that would be well suited for self-storage, and we could be a great transitional use between a heavier use and a residential use or a less intense use. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman. Be safe on your journey home. Nicole Poston? Much closer from Mesa, so please state your name and address for the record.
Nicole Poston Thompson. I am the architect and owner of On Point Architecture, located at 1152 East Greenway Street, Suite 5 in Mesa, 85203. I do not own or develop self-storage, but I am a self-storage designer, so I work for gentlemen like John. Actually, I do work for John sometimes. I'm opposed to specifically the limiting factors of the 1 mile radius, as well as the 1,300 feet at the corners. Like John, I believe that is very arbitrary. But there was a note about other uses that are limited by mileage, and I can note as an architect, those are usually marijuana facilities, drug rehab centers, and sex-oriented facilities. We're being lumped in with the same type of facilities as that, and I don't see the reason behind that. As a personal story, about 9 years ago, I sold my house. My husband and I sold our house. We had 2 weeks to get out, and we had nowhere to go because we hadn't bought a new home. So we had to move our 2 kids, our 2 cats, and ourselves into our neighbor's house, and guess where everything went? Across the street at the nearest self-storage facility. So it saved us of having to basically live on the street. I think there's a good use for self-storage. I think that this is short-sighted, and my fear is that it's going to be like a wildfire, and all of the other communities will start limiting self-storage throughout all of the cities in Mesa, or in Arizona. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Tarek Williams?
Good evening. My name's Tarek Williams. I live at 3037 East Kessler Lane in Gilbert. First of all, I want to thank each of you that's here tonight. I understand you're volunteers, and that's admirable that you spend your time contributing to the community. One of my functions also is I serve on the board of directors of the Arizona Self-Storage Association. Our membership includes in excess of 40% of self-storage owners. Those are the majority of the small business owners. A number of the corporate entities don't participate in the association. And so when I speak, it's on my own personal behalf. My family has been in the storage business since I can remember. When I was a little boy, my dad would build them on behalf of other people as a contractor, and I would sweep out units in the summers to earn a few dollars, that kind of thing. It's been a source of income for our family in that respect, and now I also am owner in a few properties. I wanted to touch quickly on something that was stated earlier, that self-storage is there because of disruption in people's lives. We spoke of new job opportunities, lost job opportunities, a new baby, all of these different life circumstances. In addition to that, homeowners now create storage as an extension of their own home with how high rent prices are and the cost of living. It's part of who they are and part of the community. In addition to the small business users, and certainly the mayor references that in his own bio, that's how he got his start in business, was starting in self-storage, operating out of a unit. So I understand that it's been stated that there's not an intent to limit storage as a part of the community, but I think we need to keep something into perspective, which is that if we take self-storage, which is reliant upon access, it's reliant upon visibility, it's reliant upon being in people's mind where it is. It's not something you ever think of until you need it, and now you really need it. And you're gonna go where you think it's at. And the moment that we restrict the location that we can put it to where it's a retail use, it really is. It is not an industrial use. And if we put it in those, if we restrict it from being in those retail locations, guess where those people are gonna go? They're not gonna go to the storage down the road. They're gonna go to the neighboring community. It was stated how many business opportunities are lost to neighboring cities. Well, those cities are going to collect those opportunities that would otherwise benefit Peoria. And so I want you to keep that in perspective when you consider limitation of location. The other is, it was stated as it's a transitional use, and I'm not sure if it was meant in this regard, but the early self-storage developers used it as a land transition. All of those land transition facilities that were intended to have something else in the future are still self-storage facilities. The benefit to the community 40 years ago or today hasn't changed. And for that reason, I would ask that you consider that as the city grows, the population grows, and business grows, that you allow self-storage to grow with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy Amadeo? Hopefully I said that right.
Good evening. Thank you so much for your time. My name is Amy Amadeo. My address is 8723 East Lomita Avenue, Mesa, Arizona. I'm the executive director of Arizona Self-Storage Association, stylized as ASA. I'm here to answer any questions regarding our slide deck. I think it's explained our feelings, and Tarek did a beautiful job, as well as John and Nicole. We do believe in growth, and we do believe, we are a state association, so, we want to be here to support the cities and the entrepreneurs. So thank you so much. And if you have any questions, just let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no other speaker request forms, so we'll close the public comment. Commissioners, do you have any comments, questions, concerns, ideas? Hold on, no. Trying to get my screen. Commissioner Konkowski?
Yes, thank you everybody for the presentation. I have a question for staff. Is there any size limitation we ever put on a development project? So many square feet, is there any?
Chair, Commissioner, are you, clarification question, are you asking, is there a restriction now on size of a facility, or are you asking, was that considered?
Is there anything now or being considered? I don't see anything being considered, but is there can the thing be so many stories high, or is it?
Chair, Commissioner Konkowski, no, that was not a consideration in which, with the setbacks and the height and all the other parameters associated, we were going to allow the zoning development standards to do what they're intended to do. So there is no intended size restriction for these facilities. So they can work within the constraints of each of the locations.
So having the, this mileage separation, do you feel that these, you are going to, I did read some comments about competition. You will limit some of that competition away from that area. You're excluding that one. I know on Lake Pleasant, I think I have 3 options within, I think I drive across the street back and forth and can check out each one of them. My thought is, I mean, if I'm going to be a developer, I can be kind of the only guy within a 1 mile radius. I could build a fairly large facility with that without any restrictions on that. I mean, then we have massive 1 facilities for that neighborhood or that 1 mile radius, which they could possibly have their own pricing model without competition.
Secretary Nelson?
Thank you, Chair. All right, a couple of questions, a couple of random thoughts. I'll start with the questions. Hopefully there's some value. The comments from the speakers provoked a thought a little bit about, if we can back up, can you go to that slide that shows the different districts where these will be permitted, either as a conditional use permit or just straight out permitted if they meet the criteria? I was curious because there was some conversation, some good points made, fair points made about having these close or near residential centers. So people want these near where they live is what I heard. Hopefully I'm interpreting that correctly. Are these districts that these would be permitted either as a conditional use permit or just straight out permitted, do they tend to be concentrated in certain parts of the valley, or do we see these districts kind of spread out all over near neighborhoods?
Chair, Commissioner, I'll start the conversation and we'll see if Chris wants to add anything in perspective. So let's touch on a couple of different things. This from the C2 zoning district, that is our primary commercial district. On every arterial intersection, you will find a C2. Those are our grocery anchored facilities. Those are, think Four Corners, think your centers about anywhere from 15 to 25 acres. Those are where you're primarily going to be doing a lot of your commercial and your retail shopping experience in that regard. Those are going to be spread out throughout the entire community on those arterial intersections. From a C4 and a C5 perspective, those are an older district. So the C4 is along Grand Avenue and the Bell Road corridor. For perspective, and going to Commissioner Kronkowski's kind of thought and question, right now, currently Grand Avenue, there are 8 facilities along Grand and they are significantly under that 1 mile separation. So if left unchecked, they can saturate within certain corridors in that perspective. Going to the C4, C5 area, that C5 is our auto district corridor. And so what is your highest and best use? And that's the question is, if not for mini storage, what else could you put there instead? If not in your employment area, what else could you put there instead? So as we go forward with growth in the northern areas and those areas that may be undeveloped or in need of redevelopment, what is your highest and best use that you would like to see there first? And then what is the priority in going forward afterwards? And so these commercial districts occur throughout the city at various locations, and we'll either come to you with entitlement documents for PADs that will have some of these underlying. So we're really looking at multiple things. The character conversation, how do industries fit in well with the adjacent neighbors? How do we make that transition from our core commercial areas outward into the neighborhood? where are we best suited to make the most impact from a jobs creation standpoint, especially when we have a number of out commuters in certain locations. So as we look forward, it's not a prohibition. These will occur in certain areas. It's where are we best strategically retaining our highest and best, if you will, and what are we saving it for? And where should those other uses then be located at? So hopefully I answered your question.
Thank you. So let me take, if you don't mind, I'd like to kind of follow up and say, so we talk about the highest and best. Sometimes we have parcels of land that are difficult to put businesses on. They sit vacant for a long time. We've addressed infill projects, and sometimes these come in handy in some of those either difficult shape, difficult geography. It could be just has stood vacant for a long time. We can't find a better use. That's a higher tax-producing use. Did the city consider maybe making an exception in those situations for a use like this, where you're approached, the city's approached, it doesn't meet the criteria for the separation, but it's been vacant for decades? Tell me what your thoughts are on that, if that was
Chair,
talked
Commissioner Nelson,
about.
great question. So we've considered that in the conversation, which is these are straight zoning districts, okay? So the land up north is in a holding pattern in particular, where you have agriculture as a designation, and so we're going to see growth opportunity. They will typically, they can pick a standard zoning district, or they will select a PAD, a planned area development, where they can customize and tailor the standards and the land uses. So there are a variety of options, and I'll give you two in particular. When we brought forward a PAD, which creates very specific restrictions on that Arrowhead RV, that was the best site. That was the ability to have a very specific entitlement case to allow that use, because that was a good location when we were moving it forward. Similarly, we had Carioca come forward to commission. That was a PAD zoning designation that specifically allowed our boat and RV storage within that land use. So these restrictions, these modifications would not impact the Carioca case. It has the allowance for mini storage. So that was us allowing commission and city council to decide if that was the best land use for that location. And in those two instances, that was a yes.
Thank you. I have a question. I'm sympathetic to people's, concern of oversaturation. It's always tended to be a use that is feared when it's usually quiet and limited traffic. But people don't want to throw away their stuff, and I understand the transitional nature of our lives. But I think as long as there's demand, development will move forward. I'm concerned, and I understand we're trying to limit it, and I understand we're trying to protect great real estate for the highest and best use for economic development purposes, because there is a big push for retail amenities, employment, economic development, all that. I'm a little hesitant in terms of, distance limitations, restrictions from according to, adjacent to major intersections. Is there a way that approval rights for the city could be more on a one-off basis with a more robust use permit process? So we can look at pieces that are more challenging, but they could be challenging, but they're still within the distance of another site, or it's a difficult piece that can be developed for storage, but it's too close to an intersection, and take it on a case-by-case basis. I'm just throwing it out there. I've always found the use interesting, because, their competition really is the dumpster and Goodwill, people getting rid of their personal items. So, and I'm pro land use, and I'm concerned about blanket restrictions. I'd like to have more of an opportunity to pick based upon site-specific conditions. So,
Chair, if I can ask a clarifying question. if not for a conditional use permit, which is an extra process that would be a time burden and money to an applicant moving forward, is there a mechanism in your mind in which to address your concerns?
No, I just caution blanket restrictions that doesn't allow the city flexibility to allow for these uses, because let's be candid. Neighbors don't want it unless they need it. The comments that the development community addressed are accurate. I haven't heard anything that they've said that's inappropriate. They are great transitional land uses from a noisy shopping center between that and a residential district. But we also don't want to give up our great real estate, because we have, limited infill sites that are great for economic development purposes. So I'm just trying to thread the needle a little bit that allows for us to protect those great sites, but not doing blanket restrictions on the community, because candidly, people like to keep their stuff and they're going to keep building it based upon demand. So I think 4% vacancy factor is pretty light. That shows you that there's demand for it. I'd just like to retain some flexibility for us to protect sites that we deemed quality for economic development purposes. So that's my 2 cents. Vice Chair Waitman?
I just want to second our chair. I think that would basically solve the problem, right? People like me that are in the middle, that understand we need this, but also understand that we are pushing economic development and we want that attraction. If we can find a way, a standard process to make that a case-by-case basis, I do think that we can kind of satisfy both needs. I'm so happy that the association came before us today, because they did say it's based on demand. They're not going to throw money into a blank hole. So if we're going to be doing that, why can't the city look at it based on demand, so that we can make that decision that this is the best use, this is not. And this way, applicants can come and prove, and they can do their research, do the market analysis, and show whether there is a demand or not. Commission, city council can go from there and kind of decide what the best land use would be, as our chair just stated. I think that would solve some of that issue, at least me being in between. I do believe we have to satisfy our residents and the demand. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Commissioner Konkowski?
Yeah, thank you for articulating that very well. My thoughts exactly with the mileage thing. I'd almost think it'd be better to have these closer together, almost, that we could designate those areas, maybe a certain land use. They don't mind being across the street from each other if there's enough demand there. But I know from a personal standpoint, my mother-in-law needed to put her stuff in storage, and my wife went to this one and this one and this one. They're right across the street from each other, and kind of made them compete a little bit. And then she got the best use of that. But if you spread them out like that, it's kind of like going to a restaurant almost. We go to Four Corners because there's a lot there and we can choose. But if there's one outlier restaurant someplace, I don't know if it would survive. Just my comment.
Thank you. Secretary Nelson?
So just a response to well, first of all, I'm supportive of this. I have a different opinion on this. I think we owe it to landowners to be clear on what our intentions are. And I'm trying to envision what a conversation would look like with an applicant standing before us and was debating whether it makes sense to go there or not. I think that's putting the city in a difficult position. I think it's putting staff in a difficult position. I think it's putting us in a difficult position, not to mention the citizens who live in and around that area. So I think to provide some clarity here, to say, here is the stand we're taking. This is where we think it's appropriate. Here's where we think it's not. And then have that conversation about aesthetics and access and all those technical requirements. So that's my 2 cents worth. On the proposed language that you had offered, are you looking for some suggestions around what, do you feel you capture everything you needed to? Because I felt like we could go even a little further, to be honest with you, in that proposed language, but I don't want to be premature in it. If you're just looking for kind of a general philosophical view when it comes to these types of businesses, we can leave it at that. We can bring that up later when we debate an actual ordinance language, but.
So what we've tried to introduce tonight is a code amendment structure that there are a number of different methods to try to, I guess, restrict or direct, rather, mini storages to more preferred locations. So as we're having this discussion, I'm hearing commentary about the need for flexibility, that we do have some difficult sites that are good, well-suited for these types of facilities. It is true that it is difficult. In a zoning administration standpoint, we have to have objective standards, and when it's more loose or arbitrary, it can be difficult to be directive and be clear and have that discussion. So one of the things I would ask the commission, as we're looking at these things, are there, of those 4 items, are there items that maybe are more important to the commission? For example, if the distance from a major arterial intersection, is that a priority type of distinction for the commission? We can certainly play around with the distance, but is that priority? You know, I'm hearing also perhaps the prohibition on certain roadways may not be, but certainly would love to hear commentary on each of those types of methods and which one maybe has a lower pain point than the others.
We're filling it up. Commissioner Myers. We got it.
Thank you, Chair. That's kind of plays into exactly what I was going to talk about. I'm closest to Lake Pleasant Parkway and Pinnacle Peak. My neighborhood's right there. I'm fortunate in the neighborhood I live in that we allow boat and RV access in our homes, but a lot of our neighbors do not allow that. New facility, well, not so new anymore, went in on Lake Pleasant and Pinnacle Peak, and almost directly across on the east side, there's an applicant for another RV storage. Obviously, to the speaker's points, the demands there, they're both in neighborhoods. I actually have a close friend that lives in a custom home on the west side of Pinnacle Peak, or Lake Pleasant and Pinnacle Peak, and they were pretty opposed to it in the beginning. But to, again, the speaker's point, they're not opposed anymore. It's quiet. It's better than it would have been any other use of that land as far as restaurants, fast food. That would have caused more noise to those homes, and those are custom $1 million homes across that neighborhood. So to the rest of the chair, the vice chair, and the commission's point, I don't believe that we should be putting restrictions necessarily on locations. We should be allowing them to dictate where they, if we're putting a restriction on a quarter-mile radius of a major arterial intersection and/or the distance of the 1 mile, that's limiting the ability of where they're needed, where the consumer and the residents need them. However, that being said, I also understand the predicament you're in, because there are pieces of property that are highly attractive that we need to capitalize on to, again, to the speaker's point, to generate tax revenue for our city. So I find you guys in a very difficult position. I look forward to seeing some things brought to the table that we can further discuss and hopefully come down to the chair's point of threading the needle and finding a common ground, hopefully a positive outcome for all parties.
Thank you. Commissioner Villasenor?
Thank you, Chair. You actually just said just about everything I was thinking, so I'll keep it very brief. This is a difficult, it is difficult. I'm struggling. I tend to fall more towards let the market dictate what needs to happen. I think that really is my personal philosophy, and I think the best philosophy moving forward. I think also Peoria, as an identity, we love our boats and our RVs, and it is who we are, really. And so putting restrictions on that, I feel like we're limiting the very people that choose to live in the Northwest Valley. But with that said, I liked what our chairperson said regarding some flexibility. However, Chris, and I know I'm just flip-flopping here, but I agree, we have to be careful to not make it too subjective, because you don't know who will be sitting up here or on council or whoever the decision makers are. So you do have a difficult task. The one thing I do like in your proposal is separating out the different categories from the indoor storage to the boat and the RV. I think that makes sense because they sound different, they look different. Not that they sound all that different, but they are different, especially visually. So I am in favor of that, but I am just undecided on distance requirements and everything else, again, because I do feel like it's very characteristic of the residents that live up here. And I would be real careful to take away from what the market dictates. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you, Commissioner. Secretary Nelson?
Yeah, just
Bring us
make it.
home.
Sorry?
Go ahead, bring us home.
I like what I'm seeing here. I'm supportive of it. The only thing I would add is I would like to see an exception considered for difficult to develop property, those oddly shaped, the slope properties, some of those kinds of projects, things that are following riverbeds. We've seen those that are very difficult for whatever reason to develop. They sit vacant, and this might be a good use for that, whether it's an indoor or outdoor. So I just think we should kind of give ourselves some flexibility in that regard. That's all. Thank you.
I just make one last comment. I feel like there's an appetite for some level of restriction. I would just highly encourage, we have a very engaged community here with the industry, and I would just like to see city staff and leadership maybe spend some time with them. That way we can accomplish kind of the limitations that we kind of feel like we're desiring, but be respectful of the industry because they're the ones that bring us development. They're the ones that bring us jobs, and it's not just the storage, it is the other industries as well. So I feel like we have folks here that they've driven from Cave Creek, they've driven from Mesa, they've driven from Gilbert. They're clearly engaged, and I think I'm making an assumption. I think they'd be willing to spend some time with you guys to see if there's a way that we could accomplish what we're trying to accomplish, yet remaining development friendly. So,
Can I make a request?
yeah, Vice Chair Waitman.
Thank you. All I want to say is I would just love to see some research as well, because I believe the association has a little bit more experience in self-storage. So if we could get some research, I'm the type, if I can see it on paper, the demand, what is happening, I just think that is important too when we revisit this conversation. I would love to see some numbers or data, and that I think would help too. I like the flexibility idea. That's what I'm going for, so thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I guess that was just discussion, so thank you, everybody, for all your input. So, and thank you to you folks for participating. So, next item on the agenda, call the public for non-agenda items. I don't have any additional speaker request forms, so we'll move on to item number 7R, reports from staff.
Chair, I'll start the conversation. So as I previewed, we do not have a February 15th meeting. The next one is anticipated to be March 7th. In anticipation, I put a star next to the time frame, so that we'll be changing to a 6 o'clock start time. So we'll remind everybody of the new start before we come back. So Chris, anything to add on that one?
No, the only other thing to add is hopefully you should have got an email from the city clerk's office about this year's boards commissions event. This year it's going to be at the Peoria Sports Complex for opportunity to see the Savannah Bananas. So if you haven't seen them, I would highly recommend it. They were a fun group to watch. We had an opportunity to go last year, had an excellent time. It was a lot of fun. So.
Great. Thank you. Looking forward to that. I think we just got our email as we were on our way here, so thank you. Any commission updates? Anyone from the commission have any discussion items? Okay. With that said, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you all.